Ethan Cole had always trusted the hum of machines more than the voices of people. On board the colony ship Odyssey Dawn, those machines were the lullaby of his life. He had worked for years as an engineer, patching power lines, maintaining reactor, coils, and making sure the giant vessel kept moving through the endless sea of stars. Humans had left Earth centuries ago, spreading out like seeds on the wind, and Ethan was one of the many caretakers who made sure those seeds survived the cold dark. He had not expected anything unusual when he climbed into the cryo-sleep pod that night. His last thoughts were routine. Check the oxygen seals, enter the timer code, press the green button. The ship's medical system would freeze his body and slow his mind until the next rotation, when he would be awakened again for duty. Like hundreds of others, he would spend decades in and out of frozen sleep, living only fragments of years across a journey that could last generations. The hiss of cooling gas wrapped around him, pulling him into darkness. His last breath before sleep was calm, but when he opened his eyes again, nothing was calm. At first, Ethan thought he was dreaming. He lay on his back, but the surface beneath him was not the familiar padded bed of the cryopod. It was smooth and faintly glowing, as if made of glass that pulsed with inner light. The air around him was warm, carrying a faint scent like rain on stone. He blinked hard, waiting for the fog of cryosleep to clear, but the sight before him remained. Vast walls of crystal rising into the shadows above, glowing softly as though alive. His heart skipped. He sat up quickly, only to realize he was unclothed. The cryosuit, the thin silver fabric that hugged the skin during stasis, was gone. He was bare, vulnerable, and every instinct screamed at him to cover himself. He wrapped his arms around his chest and looked wildly around. "Hello?" His voice echoed strangely, as if the chamber itself absorbed and stretched the sound. No answer, only the faint hum, like a chorus sung from far away. Panic tried to climb his throat. He remembered clearly entering the cryopod. He remembered the hum of the Odyssey Dawn. This place, was not the ship. There were no walls of metal, no control panels, no signs of human construction. Everything here felt otherworldly. Ethan rose unsteadily to his feet, shivering despite the warm air. The platform he had lain on floated above the ground by a thin column of glowing light. He stepped down and his bare feet touched a floor that rippled like water but held firm like stone. He crouched and pressed his hand against it. It was warm, almost like skin. His breath came faster. This isn't real. It can't be. Then, he heard it. The voices. At first they were whispers, just on the edge of hearing. Then they grew clearer, not in sound but inside his head. They were not words he knew, but somehow his mind caught fragments, as if the meaning slid between the cracks of thought. The voices were melodic, layered as though many people spoke in one breath. He spun around. Figures were emerging from the crystals. They were tall, taller than any human, with bodies that shimmered like glass filled with starlight. Their limbs were long and graceful, their faces both alien and strangely human-shaped, with eyes that glowed like suns. Their forms shifted faintly, as though they were half energy, half matter, never fully fixed. Ethan stumbled backward, his heart pounding. He had studied alien contact theories before. Every human colony ship carried records of possible encounters. But no real contact had ever happened. Humanity had crossed the stars alone, finding only ruins and empty worlds. Yet here he was, standing naked before beings that clearly were not human. One of them stepped forward. Its voice entered his mind directly. "You are awake." Ethan's throat felt dry. "Where am I? What is this? Where's my ship?" The figure tilted its head as though studying him. The others gathered in a loose circle around him, their eyes bright with curiosity. "Your vessel drifts beyond this chamber, but you are here, chosen. You are seen." "Chosen?" Ethan asked, shaking his head. I don't understand." "Why me?" The figure's glow pulsed faintly. "You were unshielded. You slept as your kind is meant to sleep. Unguarded, unhidden. That purity drew our notice. You are not clothed in false barriers." Ethan flushed with embarrassment. He hugged his arms tighter around himself. Look, this isn't purity, it's just cryosleep error or something, send me back. But the beings did not laugh. They only studied him, as though every gesture, every heartbeat was a message. Minutes passed. At least he thought they were minutes. Time felt strange here. Ethan's mind ran in circles. If this was a dream, it was too sharp, too clear. He could feel the slight tremble in his knees, the cool ripple of the floor beneath his toes, the weight of countless alien eyes on him. If it was real, then humanity's greatest discovery was happening, and he was the one standing here unprepared, unclothed, and utterly confused. The first being spoke again, though the voice seemed to come from all of them at once. Do not fear. We are the Illithari. We see beyond form. We see essence. You have been brought because you are human in truth. Ethan swallowed hard. I'm just an engineer. I fix wires, reactors, broken doors. I'm not a leader, not a scientist. I'm nobody. The chamber pulsed with faint light, as if the walls themselves responded to his words. All who walk among stars say they are nobody. Yet in the smallest voice lies the greatest truth. Ethan stared, unable to respond. Another Illithari stepped forward. Its body flickered like a candle in the wind, its outline barely holding together. It reached out a long, translucent hand and touched the air near Ethan's shoulder, though it did not make contact. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, as though the being's energy had brushed his spirit rather than his skin. Images flashed in his mind. Earth's oceans, crowded cities, fields of grain, rockets lifting into the sky, laughter, sorrow, and fire. He gasped and staggered, but the images vanished as quickly as they came. You're inside my head, he whispered. We seek to know, the Illithari said. We seek to see if your kind is worthy. Worthy of what? The being's glowing eyes met his. To join the greater song. Ethan's breath shook. This was impossible. It was too much. Yet the air tasted real. The light burned against his eyes. The floor held his weight. He thought of the Odyssey, dawn of his crewmates still sleeping in their pods, unaware. Was this happening only to him? Was the ship safe? He clenched his fists. If you're real, if this is real, then I need answers. Why me? Why not someone important? Why not a captain or a diplomat? The beings moved as one, tilting their heads in perfect unison. Because you were unguarded, because you were seen in truth. Leaders wear masks. Warriors hide behind armor. Scholars wrap themselves in walls of thought. But you, sleeping as you are, vulnerable, naked, you are the essence of your kind. Not hidden, not shielded, human. Ethan's face burned. He wanted to protest, to say this was nonsense, but some part of him, deep inside, knew there was something in their words. He was not great, he was not powerful, he was simply himself. And for reasons beyond his understanding, that was enough. The Illithari began to hum again, their voices rising like a choir. The chamber's crystals pulsed with the rhythm, and Ethan felt the vibration in his bones. A doorway opened, in the far wall, not carved but unfolding like petals of light. The first Illithari gestured toward it. Come. The council waits. Your answers will decide. Ethan's mouth went dry. Council. Answers. Decide. The words echoed in his head, heavy, with meaning. He looked down at himself once more, exposed and unready, but there was no choice. Clutching his arms around his chest, he stepped forward into the light, and though fear pressed against his ribs, another feeling rose inside him too. Wonder. For the first time in human history, a man stood before an alien court. And that man was Ethan Cole, an ordinary engineer who had only gone to sleep. Ethan Cole walked through the doorway of light, each step heavy with uncertainty. His bare feet touched the strange surface that felt both solid and liquid, warm like skin, but strong like stone. Behind him, the chamber where he had first awoken, slowly dimmed until only the glowing platform remained, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Ahead stretched a corridor of crystal, its walls alive with shifting colors. He hugged his arms tightly across his chest, still embarrassed about his state. Though the Ilithari had said it was purity, he only felt exposed. Yet there was no choice but to follow. The tall, shimmering beings moved with him, walking in silence, their forms casting soft glows against the walls. Ethan glanced at them from the corner of his eye. They seemed weightless, like their bodies were made of light wearing the shape of flesh. Sometimes their arms blurred, sometimes their outlines flickered, but their eyes, those shining star-like eyes, never wavered. They were watching him closely, studying every motion, every breath. Ethan forced himself to breathe slowly. His engineer's mind kept repeating questions. What kind of energy holds this structure together? Why is there air? Why does the temperature match human comfort? He wanted to cling to the logic of machines and systems, but nothing about this place obeyed human rules. The corridor opened into a massive chamber. Ethan froze at the threshold. The space was like nothing he had ever imagined. Columns of crystal rose in spirals toward a ceiling so high it vanished into shadows. Floating platforms hovered in midair, linked by bridges of light. At the center, a circular stage glowed brighter than the rest, and upon it stood more of the Ilithari, dozens, maybe hundreds. Their bodies shone in varied colors, silver, gold, pale blue, deep violet. Each pulsed like a star with its own rhythm. Together they formed a living constellation. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This was not just a chamber. This was a court. One of the Ilithari guides placed a hand-like shimmer near Ethan's shoulder without touching him. The gesture was clear. Step forward. He swallowed, his mouth dry, and obeyed. His footsteps echoed faintly across the glowing stage. As he reached the center, the circle of Ilithari closed in, surrounding him. They were silent, their glowing eyes fixed on him, until at last a voice filled the chamber, not from one being, but from all. You stand before the council of the Ilithari. You are called Ethan Cole of humankind. Do you accept this summons? Ethan flinched. The voice was not spoken aloud, but inside his head, rich and layered, like a choir whispering in harmony. He forced himself to nod. I don't understand. Why me? Why am I here? The voice answered. Because you were seen, because you are human in truth. Ethan clenched his fists. You keep saying that. I don't even know what it means. The chamber brightened. Images appeared in the air around him. Floating holograms formed from light itself. He saw Earth, the blue planet he had only studied in history archives. He saw its oceans, forests, and mountains. Then the images shifted. Human wars, bombs, soldiers, machines of destruction. He flinched at the sight of cities burning. Then the images changed again. Families embracing, people planting fields, explorers setting foot on new worlds, children laughing under alien suns. The visions surrounded him, shifting from beauty to horror and back again. The voice of the council filled the air. We have watched. We have seen your kinds rise, your endless striving, your violence, your compassion. You are a paradox. Tell us, human, what is the nature of your species? Ethan's heart pounded. He stared at the images swirling around him, his throat tightened. How was he supposed to answer a question like that? He hesitated, then forced the words out. We're complicated. We fight, yes, we hurt each other. But we also build, we also care, we hope. Even when it makes no sense, we keep hoping. The images froze. The Ilithari Council's glow pulsed faintly, as though considering his words. Hope, the voice repeated. A fragile word. Define it. Ethan licked his lips. He looked down, searching for simple words. Hope is when everything is dark, and still you believe the light will come. It's what makes us keep going, even when the world tells us to give up. The chamber pulsed brighter. A ripple of sound, like distant thunder, filled the air. Ethan could not tell if the council approved or doubted him. Another set of images appeared. This time, Ethan saw a battlefield. Soldiers in heavy armor clashed, their weapons flashing. In the center of the chaos, a wounded man cried for help. Next to him stood a healthy soldier holding supplies. Then the image froze. "If you were there," the council's voice asked, "would you save the wounded stranger or keep the supplies for your own survival?" Ethan stared at the vision. He could almost smell the smoke, hear the cries. His gut twisted. "I'd save him," he said quietly. "Even if it meant your own suffering?" "Yes," Ethan whispered. "Because leaving him would mean losing something inside myself. What good is survival if you lose your own humanity?" The battlefield. Image dissolved. New ones formed. A starving colony with only one ration left. A child reached for the food while a parent, weak with hunger, looked on. The image froze. "Who receives the ration?" Ethan's chest tightened. "The child," he said quickly. "Children are the future. Parents would give up their share anyway." "And if the child were not yours?" Ethan blinked, then nodded. "Still the child. Because survival isn't only about blood, it's about giving tomorrow a chance." The images vanished. The chamber darkened again, leaving only the glow of the Illithari eyes. Ethan stood trembling in the silence, his body still bare, his mind raw from the visions. At last, the council spoke again. "You answer with compassion. Yet compassion is weakness. How can a species that sacrifices itself hope to endure among the stars?" Ethan felt a spark of fire in his chest. He straightened his back, though his hands still trembled, because compassion is strength. We don't just survive for ourselves, we survive for each other. That's why we keep going. That's why we build ships, why we cross the stars. Alone we fall, together we endure. The chamber filled with silence again. Ethan's words echoed in his own head, making him wonder if he had spoken foolishly. But then the council's glow brightened, spreading warm light across the chamber. "You speak of togetherness, yet your kind has divided itself countless times. Wars, borders, greed. Explain this contradiction." Ethan sighed heavily. "Because we're flawed. We fight out of fear, out of pride, out of hunger. But even when we're at our worst, there are always people who choose better, people who stand up. Even when they're small. That's what keeps us from destroying ourselves. That's what keeps us moving forward." The chamber pulsed again. Ethan felt their gaze pierce deeper, as if they were weighing every word, every flicker of thought. His chest tightened. He wondered if he was failing. At last the council said, "The trial begins. You will face what is within you. Your choices will reveal truth." Ethan's stomach dropped. Trial? What trial? Before he could say more, the floor beneath him shifted. Light rose around him, forming walls, forming shapes. The chamber melted away like mist. Suddenly, Ethan was no longer in the crystal court. He stood in the middle of a battlefield, the same one he had seen in the vision. But this time it was real. Smoke filled his lungs, heat burned his skin, and cries of pain rang in his ears. He stumbled forward, covering his mouth, his bare body exposed to the chaos, and there, before him, a soldier lay bleeding, reaching for help. Ethan's heart raced. This wasn't just a question anymore. This was a test. The Illithari Council's voice whispered in his mind, "Choose." The battlefield stretched endlessly around Ethan. Smoke rose in heavy columns, and the air stank of ash and metal. Explosions rumbled in the distance, shaking the ground beneath his bare feet. He covered his mouth and coughed, eyes stinging from the haze. This was no simple vision. It felt real. The warmth of the air, the weight of the ground, the sting of smoke. Every sense screamed that he had been thrown into a world not his own. Ahead, through the broken earth and scattered weapons, he saw the soldier. The man lay on his back, one arm clutching a wound across his stomach. Blood seeped into the dirt around him. His eyes were wide with fear, his hand trembling as he reached out. "Help me," the soldier rasped, his voice thin over the roar of distant battle. Ethan froze. He looked around wildly. There was no weapon in his hands, no armor on his body. He was still bare, still as vulnerable as when he had first awakened. He had nothing to give. The Ilithari's voice whispered inside, his mind, "Choose. Aid the stranger and risk your own suffering or preserve yourself." Ethan's chest rose and fell quickly. His first instinct was fear. He had no medical training beyond basic first aid, no tools, no bandages. What could he do? But then he looked at the man's eyes wide with terror, clinging to hope even in pain. Ethan moved. He stumbled across the ground, ignoring the sharp stones that cut into his feet. He dropped to his knees beside the soldier. "Stay with me," Ethan said, pressing his hand against the wound to slow the bleeding. "Don't you dare give up." The soldier groaned in pain. Ethan's arms shook as he tried to hold pressure, the warm blood soaking his palms. He had no idea if it would be enough. He only knew he couldn't walk away. The world trembled. The smoke began to thin, the sound of battle fading like an echo. Ethan blinked, and when he looked down, the soldier was gone. His hands were clean. He stood alone in silence. The battlefield dissolved, the ground melting into light. In the next instant, Ethan found himself standing in a different place. He stood in a settlement built from metal scraps and stone, a small colony beneath a red sky. The air smelled of dust and dryness. Around him, people moved weakly, their faces gaunt. Hunger was written in their eyes. A table stood before him. Upon it lay a single ration pack, glowing faintly as if marked by the Ilithari themselves. Children stared at it hungrily, their tiny hands clutching their parents' clothes. Mothers and fathers stood behind them, thin from starvation, yet their eyes rested on the little ones. The council's voice came again. "One ration, a choice. Who shall eat?" Ethan swallowed hard. His stomach twisted at the sight. He thought of the long journeys on colony ships, where food shortages could mean life or death. He thought of the logs he had read about early explorers who faced such trials. He stepped closer, his heart aching. "The children," Ethan whispered. "They need it more." The images flickered. One child stepped forward, eyes wide. Ethan handed over the ration without hesitation. The child clutched it, smiling faintly despite the hunger. But the council's voice pressed further. "And if the child were not yours? Would you still give?" Ethan lifted his head. His throat tightened, but he forced the words out. "Yes. Because every child matters. They are tomorrow. If they live, humanity lives." The colony dissolved into light. The sky and dust faded away. The next trial came without warning. Ethan found himself in a narrow corridor filled with fire. Flames licked the walls, smoke coiled upward, and the air grew hot. He coughed and shielded his face. At the far end of the corridor, two figures were trapped. One was a friend, someone he recognized from the Odyssey dawn, a fellow engineer named Marcus. The other was a stranger, a woman he had never seen before, her face pale with fear. Both cried for help. Both were pinned by debris, unable to escape. The flames grew closer, roaring with heat. The council's voice filled his head again. "You can save only one. Choose." Ethan froze, his chest hammered. Marcus, his friend, his crewmate, someone who had shared laughter and work during long shifts. And the woman, a stranger, yet human all the same. The heat grew unbearable. Sweat ran down his face. He clenched his fists. "No," he whispered. "I won't choose. You must." Ethan shook his head fiercely. "No, I'll find a way. I'll save them both." He ran forward, ignoring the flames that seared his skin. He shoved at the debris with all his strength, straining, teeth gritted. Pain ripped across his arms, but he pushed harder, screaming. With effort, the debris shifted just enough for Marcus to crawl free. Ethan grabbed the stranger's arm, dragging her out as well. The moment they cleared the fire, The world shattered again into light. The corridor vanished. The figures were gone. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping, his body trembling though no burns marked his skin. Darkness surrounded him now. A cold silence pressed in. Then the council's voice came, softer than before. You risked yourself. You chose others before yourself. Why? Ethan lifted his head, still panting. Because that's what makes us human. We care, even when it hurts, even when it doesn't make sense. The darkness trembled. A soft glow filled the space, forming countless shapes, faces of humans across history, some kind, some cruel. The images flickered like stars. The voice asked again, "Yet your kind also destroys. Wars, greed, betrayal. How do you explain this contradiction?" Ethan's voice broke with exhaustion, but he spoke firmly. Because we're flawed. We make mistakes. But every time we fall, someone stands back up. We keep trying. We don't stop. That's what makes us strong. Silence followed. For a long moment, Ethan thought he had failed, that his answers were too small for such powerful beings. But then the light grew warmer, wrapping around him like sunlight after storm. Your choices are noted. Your heart speaks for more than yourself. The trial continues. Ethan groaned softly. More. His body was weary. His mind stretched thin. But he nodded. Then keep testing me. The next vision formed slowly. Ethan stood on a mountain cliff, the wind cold against his skin. Before him stretched the stars, infinite and endless. At the cliff's edge stood a small, fragile bridge of light, narrow and trembling. On the other side waited a group of humans, faces full of hope, reaching toward him. But the bridge was unstable. To cross it, Ethan would have to sacrifice his own safety. If he fell, the stars would take him. The council's voice whispered, "Would you risk yourself so others may pass? Would you be the bridge?" Ethan's heart thudded. He looked down at the void. Fear clawed at him. Yet when he looked back at the faces of those waiting, something inside him steadied. "Yes," he whispered. "If I fall, let it be for them." He stepped onto the bridge. Light flared, and suddenly the humans walked safely across, one by one. Ethan felt the bridge tremble beneath his feet, but he held firm until the last had crossed. Then the light beneath him dissolved, and he fell. The stars rushed past him. Cold wind roared in his ears. For an instant, terror consumed him. Then the fall ended. He stood once more in the crystal chamber, unharmed, the council around him. The Illithari glowed brighter now, their star-like eyes fixed on him. Their voices merged as one. You have faced fear. You have chosen others above yourself. You have spoken of hope, of tomorrow, of compassion. These are marks of humanity. Yet, the question remains, strength or weakness? Does such a species deserve to rise? Ethan's throat was dry, his chest still heaving. But he met their gaze. "It's both," he said. His voice was raw but steady. "Our compassion is weakness when it hurts us, but it's strength when it lifts others. Our hope is foolish when the odds are impossible, but it's power when it makes us keep trying. We are both weak and strong. That's what makes us human." Silence. Then slowly, the chamber pulsed with light. The council spoke. "The trials are not yet finished, but you have shown much. Rest now, Ethan Cole. The final judgment awaits." The floor beneath him shimmered, the chamber blurred, and Ethan felt himself drifting, caught between exhaustion and wonder, unsure what new test awaited him. When Ethan's eyes opened again, the battlefield, the colony, and the fire corridors were gone. The visions faded like smoke in the wind. He found himself once more in the great crystal chamber, standing at the center of the Illithari Council. The glowing beings surrounded him in silence, their starlit eyes fixed on his trembling form. Ethan's body shook with exhaustion, though no wound marked his skin. His heart was heavy with the weight of choices he had been forced to make. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Then the council's many voices spoke together, filling his mind. The trials are complete, your choices are seen. Now you shall know why you were brought here. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. Then tell me. Because I've been dragged through battles, fires, and impossible choices. I need to understand why me. Why not a leader? Why not someone prepared for this? The Ilithari pulsed faintly, as though their glowing forms breathed. Because leaders wear masks, warriors carry armor, scholars hide in walls of thought. But you, unguarded, vulnerable, seen in truth, you were the mirror we required. Humanity's essence, unshielded. Ethan hugged his arms across his chest, his face flushing. The memory of waking unclothed on that strange platform still burned in his mind. What they called purity still felt like humiliation to him. I don't see how that makes me the right choice. The council's glow deepened. Images appeared in the air around him again, floating scenes like windows into history. He saw Earth's ancient wars, the rise and fall of empires, cities, built and destroyed. Then he saw humanity's triumphs, bridges spanning rivers, rockets piercing the skies, explorers stepping on alien soil, families holding one another close in joy. We have watched your kind for longer than you can imagine, the voices said. Your species rises from weakness yet always struggles against itself. Some of us believed you unfit to join the greater song of the stars. Others believed your persistence spoke of hidden strength. The council was divided. Ethan's breath caught. You mean, you've been watching us all this time? Yes, across the ages, across the silence of your lonely journeys. We have seen you fall and rise again. We have seen cruelty and kindness, yet still we could not agree. The images shifted. Ethan saw countless alien species, some towering, some insect-like, some shaped like flowing energy. Many were ancient, wise-looking. Some were gone, their worlds abandoned, their stars cold. Others have risen before you. Many failed. They burned themselves with their own fire, consumed by greed, by pride, by war. We asked ourselves, will humanity walk the same path, or will they endure? Ethan's chest tightened. And that's why I'm here? To answer that question? Yes. You were the test. Not your leaders, not your soldiers. You. A human. Ordinary, yet true. Your answers and your choices would reveal if your species may be welcomed or left to silence. Ethan shook his head, slowly, disbelief weighing on him. I'm no one. Just an engineer. I fix broken pipes, reactor leaks, door locks. I'm not someone who should decide the fate of humanity. The Ilithari's light pulsed. That is why you were chosen. Leaders speak with pride. Warriors with anger. Scholars with riddles. But you spoke with heart. Ethan stared at the glowing beings. His knees weakened and he dropped into a crouch, his hands on the floor. The smooth surface rippled faintly under his touch, warm like living skin. His mind reeled. The fate of humanity, balanced on his words, his choices. It was too much. But then he remembered the trials, the bleeding soldier he had saved, the child he had fed, the burning corridor where he had refused to choose only one. He remembered the trembling bridge of light, and how he had stepped forward so others could cross. He realized he had acted not as a leader, not as a hero, but simply as himself. He lifted his head. So, what happens now? Have I proved anything? Or did I fail? The council glowed brighter. You have shown compassion when it brought pain. You have chosen hope when despair was easier. You have revealed that your kind, though flawed, carries the seed of endurance. Humanity may yet rise. Kyati chamber trembled faintly as though the decision itself carried weight. The council's voices rang like bells in his mind. For this reason, we gift you what has been hidden. Knowledge beyond your kind's reach. A key to survival, should you use it with wisdom. Ethan blinked in shock. Knowledge? What kind of knowledge? The Ilithari lifted their glowing hands. A small crystal formed in the air before Ethan, hovering just above his head. It was no larger than his palm, yet it pulsed with power. light shifting inside it like a miniature galaxy. Within this shard lies the memory of the Ilithari. Science to heal, to build, to endure. It will bind itself to you until the moment humanity truly needs it. Ethan reached up hesitantly. The crystal lowered into his hand. It was warm, almost alive. The moment he touched it, light spread across his skin, burning faintly but without pain. A mark formed on his wrist, glowing like a faint constellation. He gasped and dropped the crystal, but it had already vanished, leaving only the mark. The weight of it remained in his body, humming softly like a second heartbeat. He looked up at the council, fear and awe mixing in his voice. Why me? Why give this to one man? Why not share it with all of us right now? The voices answered firmly. Because power given without wisdom destroys. Your kind is not yet ready to wield it. You must walk your own path, learn your own lessons. The gift will remain hidden until the hour of greatest need. Then it will reveal itself. Ethan clenched his fist, staring at the glowing mark on his wrist. So I'm just carrying it, waiting for some future disaster? Yes. You are the bearer. You are the bridge. Carry it with humility, or it will burn your people as fire burns dry grass. The weight of responsibility crushed Ethan's chest. He thought of the Odyssey, dawn, of the sleeping crew, of the thousands of colonists dreaming of new lives on distant worlds. They knew nothing of this, and yet their future might depend on the choice he made in this strange chamber. He forced himself to his feet, legs trembling. I'll do my best. I can't promise perfection. I can't promise I'll always know what to do. But I promise, I'll try. The council's glow shimmered like stars across a midnight sky. That is enough. To try, to strive, to rise again even after falling. That is the song of humanity. We shall watch. We shall wait. The rest is yours to choose. The chamber brightened until Ethan had to shield his eyes. The Ilithari's forms blurred into pure light, their voices fading like a distant hymn. Sleep now, Ethan Cole. When you awaken, the path will continue. Remember this. You were not chosen for greatness. You were chosen because you are human. The light enveloped him fully. His body grew heavy. His eyelids closed. The last thing he felt was the hum of the mark on his wrist, pulsing like a second heart. When he opened his eyes again, he was back inside the cryopod of the Odyssey Dawn. The hum of the ship's engines filled his ears, familiar and steady. The silver cryosuit covered his body once more. For a moment, he thought it had all been a dream. But then he lifted his hand. The mark glowed faintly on his wrist, shimmering like starlight. Ethan stared at it, his breath caught in his throat. The memory of the council's voices echoed in his mind. He had been given a burden, a gift, a warning. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, greeted not by light or crystal chambers, but by the familiar hum of the Odyssey Dawn. The cold, metallic walls of the cryopod bay surrounded him. Machines beeped softly. The recycled air smelled faintly of ozone and engine oil, and the distant murmur of sleeping colonists carried through the chamber. He blinked several times, trying to shake the lingering haze of what he had just experienced. For a moment, he wondered if it had been a dream. Visions from exhaustion, perhaps, or some strange artifact of long cryo-sleep. But then his wrist caught his attention. The mark glowed faintly, almost imperceptibly, like the shimmer of starlight, reflected on water. His heart skipped. It was real. The gift, the warning, the responsibility. They were all real. He lifted his hand and traced the faint lines of the mark, his fingers trembling. Ethan drew a slow breath and sat up fully. The cryosuit that had wrapped him in stasis still clung to his body. He flexed his fingers, feeling the hum of energy in the mark. He did not know what he would do with it yet, nor when the time would come for him to act. But he knew one thing. Humanity had been seen, judged, and given a chance. He swung his legs over the edge of the pod, feet touching the cool metal floor. The cryobay was quiet, save for the distant hum of engines. The other pods remained closed, their occupants still trapped in sleep, unaware that their world had just been nudged closer to the stars. Ethan moved carefully to the hatch, the faint glow of the mark pulsing softly with each step. He did not rush. He wanted to absorb this moment, to feel it fully. The silence around him contrasted sharply with the visions he had lived, the chaos, the danger, the trials. Yet here he was, back among his people, safe, clothed and human. He paused at the hatch and looked down the corridor, down the rows of pods. He could have woken the crew immediately, shared what had happened, but how could he explain it? Words felt insufficient. Stories of alien courts, trials of morality, and glowing beings would sound like madness. And yet the weight of the mark reminded him that the story was not just for him. Ethan walked slowly to the control panel at the edge of the bay. He ran a hand over the surface, feeling the cool metal under his fingertips. Machines, wires, and screens, the familiar language of his world, grounded him. Yet the hum from the mark reminded him of a far larger world, one that stretched beyond human understanding. He closed his eyes briefly and remembered the words of the Illithari. You were chosen because you are human, vulnerable, unguarded. True. He chuckled softly. Vulnerable indeed. The thought of waking naked in an alien chamber, facing beings that could bend reality, and standing in judgment of all humanity. He shivered at the memory, yet somehow he had endured. Somehow his choices had mattered. Ethan opened his eyes and looked at the mark again. The pulse of faint light seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat. It was as if the mark itself was alive, waiting for the moment when it would be needed most. And he knew, though he did not yet know how, that humanity's survival might one day rest on him and the gift he now carried. The cryobay lights dimmed slightly as the ship adjusted its systems. Ethan moved to the nearest pod and gently tapped its controls. A soft hiss answered him. The pod opened, and a crewmate slowly emerged, blinking against the bright lights. Ethan, the crew member asked, voice hoarse with sleep. You've been out for how long? Ethan smiled faintly, carefully masking the awe and fear still lingering inside him. Long enough to dream, he said. Or maybe long enough to learn something. The crew member frowned, unsure what to make of the cryptic answer. Ethan shrugged. There were some things that could not be explained in simple words. Not yet. As the day progressed, Ethan walked among the crew, performing routine checks, repairing minor issues, and observing the ship's systems. To the outside eye, he appeared calm, composed, the same competent engineer he had always been. Yet every movement carried the weight of the Illithari's words and the mark's presence. He found himself drawn to moments of choice, small acts, that mirrored the trials he had faced, offering help to a tired crew member, taking time to repair a failing system that others might have ignored, sharing water with someone who had missed a meal. Nothing spectacular, nothing heroic, but these acts reminded him of what the Illithari had seen in him. Humanity's essence was in these small choices, these acts of compassion and endurance. Ethan's mind returned often to the words of the Council. Your choices will reveal truth. Humanity may yet rise. He wondered what lay ahead. Perhaps other trials awaited. Perhaps other beings would watch, waiting for humans to prove themselves once more. But for now, he had a chance to guide his people, even in small ways, toward the ideals the Council valued: hope, compassion, and resilience. At night, Ethan stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before him, familiar yet filled with mystery. He could see the distant glow of nearby systems, faint traces of other worlds humanity might someday reach. And among those countless points of light, he felt the pulse of the Illithari's gift within him, steady and constant. He whispered softly to the stars, almost as a vow. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I will ever be ready, but I will try. I will do what I can for those who cannot protect themselves. I will carry this gift, this responsibility, with everything I have. The mark on his wrist shimmered faintly, as if acknowledging his words. Ethan smiled, a mixture of fear, awe, and determination in his eyes. For the first time since awakening, he felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he had ever known. Humanity was flawed, fragile, and uncertain, but also capable of endurance, of hope, of greatness. The Illithari had seen it, tested it, and entrusted him with proof. And though the future remained unwritten, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He would not let humanity falter. He would not let the gift he carried go unused. The days on the Odyssey, dawn continued, filled with routine and small victories. The crew remained unaware of the trials Ethan had faced, yet the mark on his wrist pulsed like a silent reminder. He moved among the colonists, quiet and observant, learning, helping, and protecting whenever possible. Every choice, no matter how small, felt magnified by the weight of the gift he bore. And sometimes in the quiet of the observation deck, or the hum of the ship's corridors, Ethan would close his eyes and remember the Illithari's words. You were chosen not for greatness. You were chosen because you are human. The memory of the trials, the council, the battlefield, and the burning corridors filled his mind. He realized that humanity's true power was not in technology, not in weapons, not in leadership. It was in the ability to choose, to hope, to act with compassion, even in the face of fear. That was the gift he had received, far greater than knowledge or power, the knowledge that humanity itself could rise if only it remained true to its heart. Ethan flexed his hand, feeling the faint warmth of the mark. He did not know when it would call upon him, or how the gift would reveal itself, but he knew that when the time came, he would be ready. He turned from the observation deck and walked back toward the cryopod bay. The ship was alive with the quiet rhythm of life, machines humming, colonists dreaming, and stars stretching infinitely beyond. Humanity's journey was just beginning, and Ethan, once an ordinary engineer, had become a silent guardian of its future. As he moved through the corridors, he whispered a final vow to the universe, soft yet firm. I will carry this. I will endure. I will rise with my kind, whatever comes. And somewhere in the vastness of space beyond human vision, the Illithari watched, their glowing forms distant but vigilant. They had made their choice, and humanity had proven, through one ordinary man, that it was not only worthy of survival, it was capable of greatness. For Ethan Cole, the ordinary engineer who had slept naked on a strange platform and awakened, to judgment and wonder, life would never be the same again. The stars now called him not only as a traveler, but as a witness, a bearer of hope, and a bridge for the generations yet to come. And humanity, flawed yet indomitable, would one day rise, among them, guided by the choices of those who dared to act with courage, compassion, and truth.